Who purifies the SDA Church? The aims of the study is to understand, when will the church be purified? Will the image of the beast bring about the purification of the church? Is the burden of the purifying work Satan's or the Lord's? Who is tested by the image of the beast? Our prayer thought or text for meditation comes from Revelation chapter 13, verses 15 to 17. And he had great power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that have the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. So we want to find out, is this the great test for God's people? We see that a time that we're living in, we can see that the image of the beast is soon to be set up. We see economic systems, digital IDs that are busy being developed and programmed at this point to bring about an economic system that would be able to shut people out if they didn't have a passport or an identity to be in that system. And we can see these things are right on the border. Those that don't have the mark or the name or his number will not be able to buy and sell. Alright, so let us dig into this. Is the image of the beast the test for the Adventists? We see from Bible Commentary, Volume 7, page 7976, paragraph 1. It says, tested by the image. The Lord has shown me clearly that the image of the beast will be formed before probation closes, for it is to be the great test for the people of God, by which their eternal destiny will be decided. Alright, so here in the Spirit of Prophecy, it pretty much plainly states that the image of the beast, which is formed before probation, is the great test for the people of God, and which will decide their eternal destiny. Whilst it is true that the image of the beast will be formed in probationary time, and it is a test to God's people, the question really is, who are God's people being tested at this time? Is it a test for Adventists? We're going to develop this and understand this as we go through the study. Is this the great test for Seventh Day Adventists? In order to understand this, we need to go and see how many sealing reports there are from the sealing angel. 2 sealing reports from the angel with the writer's inkhorn. Let us have a look at the first sealing report. It comes from Ezekiel chapter 9, verses 11, the last verse in Ezekiel 9. And it says, And behold, the man clothed with linen, which had the inkhorn by his side, reported the matter, saying, I have done as thou hast commanded me. So we see here the man clothed in linen, which had the writer's inkhorn by his side, reported the matter. Okay, so this is the first report from the sealing angel. Ezekiel 9 is the seal for the 144,000. The church purified by the slaughtering angels. Testimonies to Ministers, page 445. In order to understand where this angel is and who is he reporting this to, we can find the answer in Ezekiel chapter 1. In verse 26, we see the following. And above the firmament that was over their heads was the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of a sapphire stone, and upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness as the appearance of a man above upon it. Now we're not going to go too much into Ezekiel, but what I'm going to explain to you is that this is a traveling throne. Jesus is seen in vision here on his throne, coming down to earth. Ezekiel was at the river Chebar when he received this vision, when the children were in captivity. We will do a study on Ezekiel chapter 1 to show what is actually happening here. But for now, for this study, we just are seeing that there is a throne that Jesus is upon, and why is he here? The angel reports the matter to Jesus on this throne. In Ezekiel chapter 10, verses 2, it says, And he spake unto the man clothed with linen, and said, Go in between the wheels, even under the cherub, and fill thine hand with coals of fire from between the cherubims, and scatter them over the city. And he went in my sight. So this sealing angel, after he has reported the matter in Ezekiel chapter 9 to Jesus on this throne, Jesus commands him and says, go under the wheels and grab and fill your hands with coals of fire and scatter them over the city. Remember in Ezekiel 9 that the city was slain and God commanded the slaughtering angels to fill the courts with the slain. So only those that are still alive, the 144,000, will receive the coals of fire. The angel reports the matter to Jesus on earth, where he is on the throne from Ezekiel chapter 1. Jesus is seen on earth in vision. He commands the man clothed in linen to scatter the coals, which represents absolute purification of the heart. Gospel Workers, page 23, effected by the pouring out of the Holy Spirit to those that are left in the city, the 144,000. Alright, so that's dealing with the first report. Let's have a look at the second sealing report. I saw angels hurrying to and fro in heaven. An angel with a writer's inkhorn by his side returned from earth and reported to Jesus that his work was done, and the saints were numbered and sealed. He raised his hands and with a loud voice said, It is done. He that is unjust, let him be unjust still. And he which is filthy, let him be filthy still. And he that is righteous, let him be righteous still. And he that is holy, let him be holy still. So we see that the sealing angel reports to Jesus in heaven, the same angel with the writer's inkhorn by his side, and reports the matter that it is done. And this is the very famous Revelation 22 verse 11, where Jesus says it is done. He pronounces these most solemn words as every case has been decided at this point. The sealing angel reports the matter to Jesus in heaven, and Jesus throws down his censer, not fire, and proclaims Revelation 22 verse 11, the close of probation. So I want you to see that we have one report for the church, the sealing of the church, and the other for the sealing of the world. So the sealing is happening in two sections, one for the church, one for the world. Take note of this, it's important. Is the beast's decree to purify? If it be true that the beast's decree is to sift out the unconverted, the tares, that are in the church, then one must conclude that the beast is not a symbol of a power of dragon-like principle, but a heaven-sent agency sent to cast out the tares which the dragon has brought in. So what we see here is that if it's the beast's decree to sift out the unconverted, then we have to come to a conclusion that the beast is something from heaven to cast out those that are in the church. But this sounds ludicrous, doesn't it? It is Satan's predetermined purpose to pollute the church by multiplying instead of reducing the disloyal members. If we read Great Controversy, page 384, paragraph 5, we see that Satan flooded the church, and we're going to see that from Revelation 12. He flooded the church with pagan converts, and they are still in the church today. We call them tares today. Revelation chapter 12 verses 15 and 16 says, And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. So here we see that the serpent, Satan, cast out of his mouth water as a flood. We know from Bible prophecy that water is a symbol of people. So this is a multitude of people that that tried to flood the woman, the church, that it may be carried away by the flood, so that the church may be flooded and then eventually carried away by this flood. But God steps in, and we see that the earth helped the woman and opened up her mouth and swallowed up the flood. So at some point, yes, the church is filled with tares today, but at some point God is going to step in and open up the earth and swallow this flood, remove the tares from the church. Whose burden is it of purifying the church? If his most drastic fiat is to purify the church, then to what purpose does the Lord suddenly come to his temple and sit as a refiner and purifier of silver? Malachi 3. Why is the message to cause the shaking? And why are the angels of Ezekiel 9 those who shall come forth to sever the wicked from among the just? So this first part is talking about Satan. So if Satan's most drastic fiat is to purify the church, then for what purpose does the Lord suddenly come to his temple? Why does he have to refine and purify? Why is there a message that is to cause the shaking in the church today. And why are the angels of Ezekiel 9 those who shall come forth to sever the wicked from among the just? Why are all of those then happening if Satan is the one to purify the church? Is the burden of the purifying work Satan's or the Lord's? Satan is doing nothing to purify the church, but doing everything to pollute it. Remember, in the early church days, he has caused a pagan flood to flood the church with tears. Therefore, the beast's decree and his rigid enforcement of it are not for the purpose of purifying the church, but for the purpose of blockading the way out of Babylon, thereby holding the world captive. So here we see that the beast's decree is not about purifying the church, but actually to hold those that God wants to come out of Babylon, to stay in Babylon. That is the purpose of the beast's decree. Sunday's purpose is to block the way. This he does specifically to halt the steady flow of multitudes of converts to the then already purged and purified church. In spite, however, of the enemy's heaviest efforts to keep them in Babylon, the faithful will come out. So again, we see that Sunday is to block the way for the great multitudes that are going to come to the already then purged and purified church. They will take heed of the Lord's counsel. If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead, or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Third angel's message, Revelation chapter 14, verses 9 and 10. God's people in the time of the loud cry are going to heed the Lord's counsel and come out, as in Revelation 18, verses 4. God purifies the church. From Ezekiel 9, we see that not the beast, but the angels are to do this. After the one with the writer's inkhorn by his side marks those who sigh and cry for the abominations that are done in their midst, the 5 with slaughter weapons follow on to slay who are left without the mark. I'll put a link to Ezekiel chapter 9 at this point. And the great purgation, as both the prophecy itself and the testimony specifically state, take place in the church. We see that in Ezekiel 9, that this separation, this sealing and this slaughtering happens in the church, in Jerusalem, in the midst of the city. And Sister White tells us in Testimonies 266 that these are the ones that are sealed because they sigh and cry for the abominations that are being done in the church. So no escaping that this happens in the church first. 1 Peter 4 verse 17 says that judgment will begin in the house of God first. Purification of the church. Testimonies to the Church, volume 5, page 79, paragraph 4 says, "But the days of purification of the church are hastening on apace. God will have a people pure and true. In the mighty sifting soon to take place, we shall better be able to measure the strength of Israel. The sign reveals that the time is near when the Lord will manifest that his fan is in his hand, and he will thoroughly purge his floor." So we see that Sister White tells us that the days of the church being purified is very close. And after this purification, God will have a people pure and true. And this mighty sifting is soon to take place. And after that, Israel will be strengthened. And why will it need to be strengthened? Because it has a work to do. 144,000 are the servants of God that need to bring in the great multitude of Revelation chapter 7 verses 9. Then she quotes from Matthew 3 verse 12 and says that the Lord will manifest his fan in his hand and he will thoroughly purge his floor, showing us that God is the one that is going to purify his church. There is a purification in God's church, and it's the Lord who will purify it. After we see that Israel has strength to finish the final work, final probation does not close after the church is purified. So here we see that there are 2 probations, one for the Seventh Day Adventist Church, which brings about the 144,000, and a close of probation for the world after the great multitude has been brought in. So remember, we saw the 2 sealings from the man with the writer's inkhorn by his side, reporting once the matter of Ezekiel 9 to Jesus while he was on earth, and then the second time reporting it to Jesus while he is in heaven. The church enters into a final battle. This is during the loud cry period. Purification of the church. "For behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh. And the slain of the Lord shall be many, they that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the garden behind one tree, in the midst, eating swine's flesh, and the abomination and the mouse shall be consumed together, saith the Lord. So here we see an event where the Lord will come with his chariots like a whirlwind. We'll see that kind of language being spoken of in Ezekiel chapter 1. The Lord is going to slay many, many people. Those people that sanctify themselves and purify themselves in the garden behind one tree in the midst, and they're eating abominable things like swine's flesh and the abomination and the mouse. So these are the unconverted in the church that God is going to come and sort out. The coming of the Lord with fire to render his anger with fury is not the coming of Christ in the clouds to receive his people. It is before the close of probation and in the time of purification of the church. See Malachi 3 verses 1 to 3. He comes with vengeance to those who claim his name, but follow man instead of Christ, and the result is that they do not keep his truth. The class who do not investigate for themselves, but accept the decisions of others who are following after man and are in the clutches of the devil. Alright, this is just a summary of the two sealings, starting from the left-hand side of the page. The sealing time for the Seventh Day Adventists, sealing of the servants of God. Seventh Day Adventists are sealed with the Sabbath seal, and those that sigh and cry are sealed with the seal of Ezekiel chapter 9, before the blowing of the four winds. The seal that both John in Revelation 7 and Ezekiel in Ezekiel 9 saw are the same. And we see that from Testimonies to Ministers, page 445. The angel with the writer's inkhorn is to place a mark upon the foreheads of all who sigh and cry for the abominations. And then the destroying angel are to slay both old and young. Ezekiel 9, verses 4 to 6. Only those who have the seal of Ezekiel 9 will be left in the city, the escaped ones of Isaiah 66, verses 19. The close of probation for the church, freed from sin and sinners. From henceforth there shall no more come into thee the uncircumcised and the unclean. Isaiah 52 verse 1. The angel with the writer's inkhorn reports the matter to Jesus on his traveling throne of Ezekiel chapter 1. Reports the matter in Ezekiel 9:11. And then we see that the coals of fire being done in chapter 10 verses 1 and 2. Then the image of the beast forms. So the servants of God are sealed first before the image of the beast comes on the scene. We see that from Testimonies to the Church, volume 5, page 152, paragraph 2. We see that the four winds that the angels are holding back are the mark of the beast, the time of trouble such as never was, the Sunday laws. Those are all synonyms for the four winds. So the four winds will not blow until the servants of God are sealed in their foreheads. Read Revelation chapter 7, verses 3. On the right-hand side, we see that the sealing time then starts for the world. God's people in the loud cry period are those in Babylon. The three angels' message would have swelled to a loud cry. We see that in early writings, page 33, paragraph 2, it says that the children of Israel were filled with the Holy Ghost and they went to go and proclaim the Sabbath more. The image of the beast, the great test for the people of God by which their eternal destiny will be decided. This is where Bible Commentary, volume 7, page 976 comes into play. So we see that, yes, while that is the great test for God's people, it's not for Adventists, but for those that are in Babylon that need to be tested by Sunday. But they will be tested as God's people will be trying to call them through the loud cry out of Babylon. We see that Revelation 18 verse 4 says, "And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues." God's people in Babylon are commanded to come out and join the 144,000 in a clean vessel. At that point, God's church will be pure and clean, and will never have an unclean person in the church after it has been purified. The angel with the writer's inkhorn reports the matter to Jesus in heaven. We see that in early writings, page 279. And at that point, the close of probation happens, where Jesus says those solemn words of Revelation 22, verse 11. Our study summary: it is the Lord that purifies the church, not Satan. The church is purified first and set free from sin and sinners. Only then can the servants of God, the 144,000, gather in all their brethren and bring them into a clean vessel. The Sunday law will be a great test for the people of God in Babylon after the purification of the church. There are 2 sealing reports from the angel with the writer's inkhorn. Probation closes for the SDA church first, then the world. So there we have it. We see that the test of God's people in the loud cry period are for those that are in Babylon. Sunday is not the test for Adventists. The test for God's people at this time is for us to sigh and cry for the abominations that are being done in God's church today. And there are many. May the Lord continue to help you as you study for truth. God bless.